Thank you. Thank you so much for this invitation. In fact, it's just that I'm here for 2 days because I'm on sabbatical. So they caught me right at the right time, ending the 2 weeks I heard of the Islamic awakening and choosing this topic about the messenger, the prophet, peace be upon him. Two things that I wanted to start with was mentioned that I don't like clapping, and it's a special fatwa that I have, which is fatwa is a legal opinion, but it has nothing to do with a legal opinion. I'm just trying to change the way people are coming to lectures and listening to lectures, much more than the fact that it has to do with the substance. And the way I put it is, when you are reading a book and you like the ideas that you have in the book, you don't start clapping. You just think about what you heard. And I think that in lectures, we should do exactly the same, being less emotional in the way we listen and more meditating on what we listen to. So if you like what you hear, do as if you were reading a book and you think about it. If now you clap when you read, it has to do with psychology. That's something else. I let you do what you want. The second thing is, as we are talking about the very important and central figure in Islam, who is the messenger, peace be upon him, and I think it's important to get it right. Why these days we are coming back and trying to get a better understanding. It's something which is a very old Islamic tradition. There is no Islamic teaching without discussing, coming back to the set of texts that we have, which are the second set of texts, which is called a sunnah, which is the reference based on what the messengers said, did, or approved. This is the classical definition of sunnah, which, by the way, has to be discussed as well. I will come to this. So we are always dealing with his presence and his example. The problem, so it's a tradition, it's not new. The problem is that, in fact, the way his life, the way his example is taught, might be, in fact, problematic. And I take what is happening now in the West, with all what is said about the messenger and the prophet of Islam, and sometimes being ridiculed and being insulted, as in fact not only a negative way to talk about him, but a necessity for Muslims to come back to a better understanding of who he was and how we have to talk about him. In anything negative, there is positive. And instead of repeating his life with the facts, and very often when we are talking to Muslims, the way we educate the Muslim children is very much about knowing the dates, knowing the facts. It's not loving the man, not understanding the message. And this is why I'm saying, if you want to come to an introduction to Islam, the best introduction to Islam is his life. It's not starting by reading the Quran. The Quran is very difficult to get, because it's a book. When you start reading, you are starting reading chapters that are in fact coming 13 years after the first revelations that are at the end of the book. And if you want to get the message, it's difficult. You need to be equipped to understand the Quran. His life, by definition, because it's a biography, has to be put into chronology. And then you can get from his life the connection with the revelations he got in a very specific period of time. So you can get the message, and you can get its translation into his life, is his behavior. And then you get a better understanding of what the message meant or means, if and only if you come to the meanings and not only to the facts. It's not a life of battles, it's a life of applied ethics, values, principles, behavior. And I think that this is where I want to bring you with me this evening. So the second point here is, in the Islamic tradition, we speak about his life in two ways. There are two words that we have. The first, when it comes to the scriptural sources, we say there are two sources. One is Al-Quran, the very word of God, and the second is the Sunnah. In the legal tradition, the Sunnah was reduced to what I said before, what the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, did, or approved. And in fact, the Sunnah was reduced to this by the fuqaha, the jurists. But at the beginning, the Sunnah was wider than that. The Sunnah was the way he was dealing with the surrounding context. And the first scholars, and one of the first, the reference, Malik, Anas, when he was talking about the Sunnah, was not talking about only the rules that are extracted from his life, but the way of life he had in a specific context. To the point that he was in fact involving himself in the Sunnah by saying, Al-amru indana, meaning the way I see the thing is in the context. So he was putting himself into the Sunnah, something which is wider than only rules. So if we take the Sunnah as only the rules that are extracted from his life, we are reducing the thing. And we need to get this. It's you keep the meaning of things if you put rules within the life of the messenger, but not extracting the rules without understanding them within a life, a way of living, a way of life. And I think that this is the first disconnect that we find in our tradition, is to reduce his life when it comes to the sources to rules and not to rules within a way of dealing with the context, with humanity, with himself, for example. So this is one. The second word that we have in Arabic is as-sira, and as-sira is known as being the biography. So it's biography. And biography in itself, it's not, these are not books from which we take rules. We just get his life and we understand the way he, in fact, dealt with the revelation over the 23 years of its revelation. So we take from the Sunnah the rules, and we take from the Sirah the meaning and the history. And I think that we have to reconcile the two. We have to put much more Sirah in the Sunnah and take much more Sunnah as rules and principles within the way we deal with the Sirah. And I think that this is an important dimension in anything which has to do with Islamic scholarship. Because you have people who are experts in dates and facts and superficial in meaning. If you understand what I mean here, it's essential in our categorization of knowledge. So this is why when we have people coming to us now who are people of other faiths, Hindu, Buddhist, Jews, Christians, atheists, agnostics, and they are challenging the man through some of the facts and some of their understanding of Islam, it's important to come back to this comprehensive understanding, the deep understanding of his life. So we need to go through a reconciliation with his central position within Islam. So the second point that I wanted to make here is very important to deal with his life, with his behavior, understanding Sunnah and Sirah, and coming back to what you heard right now in the verses that were recited, where there is something which is essential in the way you follow the messenger. There is one verse here which is, once again, very deep in meaning and very often read superficially in its practical translation. قل Say, in kuntum tuhibbun Allah fattabi'un. Say, if you love God, follow me. In fact, the starting point of your relationship with Him is loving the one who sent Him. And if you love the one who sent Him, this is the deep way you are going to follow the messenger. In fact, it's a love story. It's not a way of dealing with rules. It's a way you deal with your heart. Once again, this dimension is very often lost in our way of dealing with Him. And the way we love Him, in fact, is so emotional that we don't understand that the way we should love the Prophet, it should not be emotional as we have with all these people taking to the street and ready to kill anyone who is going to insult him, because you can't love him to the point of killing people, because this is why you understand that you don't love him, the one, because the one is telling you you can't kill people. So we have to purify our love towards the messenger by the love towards God, and not take the means for the end, which is what is happening. You know, I'm always referring to the Chinese proverb, which is very Islamic, and some Muslims, they think that we only quote Islamic texts when there is a stamp coming from the Islamic tradition. Now, there are many things that are Islamic coming from people who are not Muslim. And when it is said in the Chinese tradition, when the wise man point out to the moon, the fool is looking at the finger. It's true. It's happening within our tradition. Ending up confusing who we are worshipping. He is but a man and should not be worshipped. He should be loved by the love we have towards the one. And this is the starting point of everything. If you love the one and you come close to the messenger, you understand that the messenger is helping you to come close to the one, not close to him, to the point that you are losing your wisdom by being emotional. In the way you love God, there is wisdom. In the way you love the finger, there is emotion and blindness. That's essential in our understanding, and this is the starting point of education here. So this is where we have to come to something which is very important in the way he himself was talking about his own mission, and the way the one who sent him was talking about him, by saying, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. We sent you but as a mercy to the world. You are a gift. If now the Muslims don't know how to translate the gift into a gift, the problem is not the gift. The problem is the Muslim. Translating something which was, he was a gift, into something which is aggressive, alienating, confused. And this is where we have to come back to the source, saying, you are a mercy. What is a mercy? A mercy is that within the gift, it might be that there is something that you don't know, which is going to be positive. And what is positive? Something that he said, وَمَا كُنْتُ بِدْعًا مِنَ الرُّسُلِ. The messenger, he is asked to say, قُل, say, okay, you are not a new thing, a new message to the world. You are not new. What you are coming with is something which is very old. In fact, the gift that he is comes from the fact that he's reminding the people of old messages that the people have lost. The gift is reminding. And in fact, what is the name of the Quran? The name of the Quran is a dhikr, remembrance. So in fact, he's a gift, not because he's coming with something which is new. He's a gift because he's reminding something which is old, which is in every tradition. In fact, he's coming to confirm what came with Moses, what came with Jesus, and the very central relationship to the one. It's in the Quran. وَمَا كُنْتُ قُلْ وَمَا كُنْتُ بِدْعًا مِنَ الرُّسُلِ. So I'm not coming with something new. Even more important, he said about his mission, something which, when you think about it, it's very deep. When he said, إِنَّمَا, so referring to his mission, بُعِثْتُ لِيُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمِ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was sent to complete, to achieve the good character. Meaning what? I was sent to utammima, meaning utammim is to complete. What he means by this is that they were good characters, values that came before me. I'm just here to confirm. Li-utammim, meaning to complete what came before. And when you complete, it means I confirm and I add. But what I add, it's not new, it's the way you have to translate this into your life. So he is coming within the tradition, within the monotheistic tradition, and within the monotheistic tradition, there are things that are coming from the Jewish tradition, the Christian tradition, but not only. Why? Because in the Islamic tradition, there is something which is essential, which is why the Muslim scholars in the Middle Ages, they had no fear of the Greek philosophy. Why? Why do you see in the Christian tradition, and especially the Catholic tradition, so much fear towards the Greek tradition? And you look at the Muslim philosophers, and they were taking it like this. Why? Because there is something which is essential in our tradition, is we trust the human mind, the human intellect. We trust something which is called in Islam al-fitra, which is the natural attraction, yearning towards truth. What is in the classical Islamic understanding of human being is, first we are positive, we are innocent, and there is something in us which is looking for the truth. We trust the human nature. We don't have original sin. We trust the human nature. Meaning that when you deal with the Greek and you listen to Socrates saying, I know that I know nothing, you said, that's it. We agree with that. Good point. When, for example, coming from the Greek philosophers, that you have the essential part of our life is to get wisdom, and out of this wisdom, happiness, yes, that's it. We agree with this. Nothing wrong with this. This is the universal, intimate message of humanity that God put in our hearts. No problem. So there is something in the way that he's putting, I'm coming to achieve the good character, saying, you will find in other traditions things that I confirm, nothing new. It's just a confirmation, if only you study. And in the light of what I'm saying right now, you understand why. You have one verse talking to humanity and not only to the believers, saying, Ya ayyuhan nas, O you people, not Muslims, people, nas. Inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. We created you out of men, female and male. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. And we made you tribes and nations in order for you to know each other. So in fact, diversity is God's will. And out of this diversity is mutual knowledge. And if you come to Arabic, لِتَعَارَفُوا means on equal footing. Your journey towards God, it's a journey of mutual knowledge. To know what? That you are going to find in Hinduism, in Buddhism, in the Greek tradition, with atheists, with agnostic, with Judaism, with Christianity, values that you have already in your tradition. And sometimes the others are going to teach you again what you have in your tradition. In fact, this mutual knowledge is helping you to be better yourself. It's not to be alien, it's to come to the universal intimate message that we find in the creation of Bani Adam, human beings. And this is why you understand the whole concept of this diversity based on there is a diversity, meaning there are different ways coming to the universal, intimate reality, which was put in the heart of human beings. And this is what we call al-fitra, this natural yearning towards truth. For us, this natural yearning is coming back to God, but other traditions were different ways. And this is why Islam came for the Muslims, our understanding as Muslims. He was sent to come to say, there is this natural yearning, but the answer is the one. La ilaha illallah, which is the tawhid, the oneness of God. What I'm saying here is that when we come to his life, we need to have this background. We need to have all this, not only to come to the life of a man, but a life of a man with it a concept of life, with it a concept of death, with it the meaning of life. Not only his life, but the life and the history of humanity, and the diversity within humanity. So this is why you understand that what he's saying when he comes and he says, my mission is just to confirm, is just to remind you of things that are in you that you are forgetting. You know why? Because as human being, in Arabic, there is a reference to el-insan, and the roots of el-insan is connected to nisyan. We are by definition people who forget. So we need remembrance. And he came as somebody who is remembering us of this universal message. Now, if you come with this, you get a better understanding of how we have to deal with his life, not only through facts, but understanding what he came with and what are the values and what are the principles. So I'm not going to come with a chronology. What I'm going to do right now is just to take some topics and themes that I think are important for us to understand better the way he was and what he wrote and what he reminded us of. The first thing which I think it's important is referring again to these two ahadith, the prophetic traditions that I was referring, when he's saying, I was sent to confirm. So there are two messages in this very simple quotation. The first is, as I said, he's confirming. The second is he's saying, in fact, I came to remind you that there is one God. But I came to remind you that believing in one God should be visible. It should be visible through your behavior. In fact, لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمِ الْأَخْلَاقِ, meaning I came to remind you that good life is based on virtues, good behavior. Which is something that we find in the Quran, which is الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, those who believe and do good deeds. In fact, faith in Islam should be visible. Visible through what? Going outside this room and saying to all the people, I am a Muslim, as we do today, or showing through our behavior what it means to be a Muslim. In fact, is what your faith is doing with you and not with the way you talk about your faith. It has to do with behavior. And this is what he's saying. My mission is to change your behavior, is a reform in the way you behave. Based on what? Al-akhlaq, these are values. Values, principles. The principle of what? Something that we have essential in the starting point of his life. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We gave dignity to human being. Dignity is central, meaning you have to be dignified. Dignified means what? Something that we find in another hadith when he said, وَأَعْطِ كُلَّ ذِي حَقٍّ حَقًّا. Give to everything in your body, in your mind, in your senses, its rights. God gave you a mind, use it. God gave you a body, respect it. God gave you a heart, listen to it. God gave you something, you have to give it. This is why you find in the Quran, وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. Those who, when they are with God, they use all the qualities that they have to give them to people. Very often the Muslims are understanding وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ means material. It's money. No. Qualities, time, smile. And this is why you find in the hadith, a smile in the face of your brother or your sister is a sadaqah, is something which is like a prayer. It's coming close to God. Give from what you have. You have smiles, give your smile. This is the way he was saying and talking about his own mission. I came to remind the people of these very simple things that are essential to change your life and to change your society. This is one. It's based on values and it's based on behavior. If you come to this, and you come now to what was philosophy at the beginning of philosophy. If you come to some people, like for example, without acknowledging that there is one God, like Socrates, or Plato, or Aristotle, it was something in the Greek tradition which was essential to define philosophy, loving wisdom. Loving wisdom meant, in fact, there should be a consistency between your values and the way you behave. It's not the analytical philosophy that we have today. It was a philosophy based on the two dimensions. And you find this in the Jewish tradition, in the Christian tradition. This is the starting point of everything. How do you call it today? If we are serious about this, what is, in fact, the definition of the word that we can use to say this is the word when you can see in what you do? When you put intention in what you are doing, it means that you are putting a meaning with an objective. You do things with an objective. You know how it is when you come with gifts. You come a gift. You want to please someone. You want to show your love. A gift is, here is my love into what I give you. There is a meaning here. How do you call that? This is the true meaning of spirituality. Spirituality is not to pray during the night and to be active during the day. Spirituality is in everything. As soon as there is meaning in what you do, to serve for the better, to remember the essential, you are in a spiritual life. A spiritual life is meaning into action. So there are some people who are praying without spirituality. They respect the rituals, but they don't put the intention, they don't put the meaning in it. Which in fact, the meaning is coming close to God, loving God, trying to serve humanity. So the problem is that this disconnect that we have between religion based on rituals or rules, halal, haram, and losing the meaning. This is why you see the Prophet, peace be upon him, everything that he was doing has to do with reconciling rules and meaning, intention and objectives. Everything. It's all based on this. This is spiritual life. This is spiritual life. So you can be very spiritual with your skin, with your body, with your heart, with your eyes. It depends which meaning you are putting in what you are doing. So this is where it's essential in the way he was. And you will see in all the themes that I'm using here, or I'm referring to, meaning is everywhere. In fact, spirituality is everywhere. So you cannot disconnect your life from spirituality. You're not spiritual on Sunday or on Friday, and not spiritual on Monday. You should be even spiritual in this room, in the way you have your intention, which objectives you are trying. This is spiritual life. You should be spiritual in the way you eat. In the way you eat. Why? What is the meaning of eating? How do you eat? What do you eat? There is spirituality in the way you choose what you eat. Some are rejecting the consumerist society. Intellectually, everything is wrong. But the way they eat, it's very much rooted in the consumerist society. Or they dress. Or they speak. So this is why it's very subtle. Everything has to do with intention meaning and objective. This is spirituality. And when you come back to his life, you will see that everywhere intentions are questioned, objectives are discussed, and meaning are reminded everywhere. So the first topic that I wanted to take, for example, when you come to his life, is something which is essential also. I myself changed my mind and changed my understanding of many things. When I wrote the book, many things came to me in a completely different way. In fact, in the literal meaning of the word, it was almost a conversion, converting something. And we know that in the prayer, the supplication, say we talk about God, say Ya muqallib al-qulub, so the one who is changing your heart. Muqallib means reverting, converting. And there is something which is essential in his life. You cannot understand his life if you don't study the relationship the messenger had with the poor people, the needy within the society. In fact, the first who followed him were the poor. So much so that the rich were saying, look at the people who are following you, all the poor. But it's very interesting because all the prophets and the messengers were followed by the poor. All of them. You know why? Because the rich are dealing with power. The poor are dealing with change. They are ready to listen to something which is, we need change. There is something wrong in the whole system. When you have power, the status quo is always better. But when it's challenged, and then you come with questioning, it's important. By the way, what I am saying is very close to the Marxist theory. But in fact, the Marxist theory was taken by other theories before, which is a sense of history. The oppressed change history much more than the oppressor. The poor much more than the rich. And then you see something which is essential. It was not using the poor everywhere in his life. By being connected to the poor, you are connected to the meaning of life. Because you are dealing with people who are rejected or marginalized or rejected within the society, and what he was saying is not to serve them, is to love them. Allahumma nas'aluka hubb al-masakin. Oh God, we are asking you to love the poor people. So as much as I love you, to love the poor people, it's a love story again. Is how do I love people who have nothing, but they are dignified. Being dignified, having nothing. Which could be very interesting for us to remember this in our capitalistic society. How do we acknowledge the value of people? So this is something that we find around the mosque of the prophets in Medina. The poor were here always. And look at this. Impossible for you to go to pray God without going through meeting the poor. Seeing the poor. Everything in Islam is based on this. The second practical pillar of Islam is based on zakat. And zakat is what? Is the right of the poor on your richness, on your wealth. And if you fast 1 month during Ramadan, it's all to experience what the poor are experiencing, to come close to him and close to them. Because the best among you is the one who is serving humanity. Ahabbu nas ila Allah, the one who are the most loved by God, are the one khayrukum linnas, are the people who are better, are the more useful for people. Not only Muslims, linnas, meaning all the people. And here you come with an understanding that there is no faith, no spirituality if you disconnect yourself from the poor within your society. Meaning the people, the neighbor, the people who are close to you. So much so that when we come to implementing zakat in Islam, it has to be taken by the rich people here to the poor people here. Min aghniyaihim ila fuqaraihim. So meaning here you have to pay. So a sense that he was bringing which has to do with you should care about your poor people here, where you are, your neighbor. So if you look at this, there are 2 or 3 occurrences, but there is one which is very important in the Quran, where God is talking to the Prophet, telling him, you made a mistake. And this is why the scholars were saying, it shows that the Quran is not coming from him, it's coming from God telling to the Prophet, you made a mistake. When a poor old people came to you asking about the Quran, and you neglected him in order to talk to the powerful. Abasa wa tawalla. And God is telling him it's wrong. When the poor old is asking you about the meaning, you have to care about who he is and not what they have. That's the point. That's essential. This is spirituality. Because if you trust me, you don't rely on the people who have, you rely on respecting who they are, even if they have nothing. So this is the very powerful dimension that we find. And when I'm talking like this, I can talk to Christians, to Jews, to Hindus, to Buddhists. This message is universal. We understand what I mean by this. We understand that the true meaning of life is there. It's not in having, it's in being. It's to care about the poor. This is our dignity. If we are dignified, this is the way we are with the poor people. And this is the way he came back to remind us the way we should be. And this is connected to power. And this is something which is very important. When he said, look at this, because this is something that we don't talk about. You know, a wise man, by definition, should be a courageous man. I don't know, today the wise man is a silent man. Don't talk about politics. I don't know, this is the new things that we have with Sufi now. Say, oh, I'm a Sufi, I don't do politics. No politics is politics. And silence in front of dictators is politics. Of course it is. But he was not like this. He said, Afdalul jihad, the best resistance and reform, kalimatu haqqin aman sultan jahil. It's a word of truth in front of a tyrant. Meaning, if you serve the poor and you trust him, you are not scared of the powerful when they are dictators. You have to stand. And he was facing the powerful. The Quran is telling him, be careful. You can rely on them, but you should not lose your principles with them. And sometimes you have to stand up. And you have to be clear. And all the companions were saying, in all the battles, the first to be courageous and to come first was him. He was at the forefront. Not with the type of our courageous mystical brothers or Sufi that are distorting the very meaning of Sufis by saying we should not be ruled. And in fact, when he came, arriving in Medina, where in Medina, after 13 years of passive resistance, it was clear that something is going to happen. It was going to be, they want to destroy us, now we have to resist. We have to resist the oppressors. We have to resist. We need to be equipped. And he arrived, and the first thing that he said, settling in Medina, is Ifshu Salam, spread peace. He said, look at this, Ataymu Ta'am, the poor people, give to the poor people. Silul Arham, be careful, keep your family ties, keep your families, keep this relationship. And then what he said, Sallu wa nasuniya, pray while the people are sleeping. This is mysticism. This is take care of your heart. When all the people are sleeping, this is where you wake up and you pray. Meaning, far from them. He said this, settling in Medina where the struggle is going to be very difficult because they want to kill you. So meaning your power, your spiritual power is give meaning to your life, means resist the oppressors and serve the poor. It's not only to serve the poor and forgetting about the oppressors. You have to deal with this. And this is what he did. In fact, he left Mecca because they wanted to kill him. He resisted their wars because they wanted to destroy him. But he stood up with this word of wisdom, and he said that the best resistance is to be able to resist the oppressor. So it means, be careful. It's a question of solidarity with the poor. It's a question of justice with people. It's not only, the kind of showing charity and solidarity. No, it's a question of justice. Dignity has to do with rules. Dignity has to do with power. Challenge power and be able to do this. And if you listen to his life, he never disconnected wisdom from courage. And this is what we find in the Greek tradition. Courage is important. Jesus, exactly the same. Anyone who is telling me that Jesus had no political word doesn't know anything about Jesus. Jesus faced power by saying, you are corrupt. Moses, you are corrupt. Who said this also? And he was killed. Socrates, the big philosopher, he was considered as corrupting the youth. He was killed. But he faced power by saying, you are wrong. But he was a wise man. He was a philosopher. He was loving wisdom. But not being scared of power. So this is something that we find in his life. In the life of the Prophet is the way he was dealing with power, facing with courage, and something which is important. But there is also something which is important, is the way he was dealing with his own authority. And sometimes we have to remind Muslims today, if he was like this, how should we do, how should we be with some of our scholars and our authorities today? In Ghazwat Badr, in one of the battles, a companion came to him and he put he organized the camp in a way, and a companion came to him and said, I have a question. The way we are put, is it a revelation or is it your opinion? Look at this. Look at the follower coming to the leader and having the space to question his authority. Where does it come from? Is it coming from your opinion or is it a revelation? Meaning, if it's a revelation, I keep quiet because it's coming from God. But if it's coming from you, I might have another opinion. You might be wrong. I say, no, it's my opinion. He says, so it's wrong. We have to change the strategy. Anyone who is saying in Islam that we are confusing political power and religious power should come back to this story. There is a difference between following what is coming from God and discussing what is coming from humanity. When we deal with strategy, with a state, this is a human opinion. It's not a revelation. So this is where we should be free to discuss. He opened the space for people to question his human authority. Because he himself, in front of the divine, or before the divine, he was just Sami'na wa ata'na. I take it as it comes. But when it comes to the strategy, everything is over. To the point that in one of the battles, later in Uhud, he came with the people and discussed the issue about what could be our strategy. He was of the opinion, which at the end was the right one in strategic terms, to stay within Al-Madinah when the enemies were coming. But the young who were not there at the previous battle, they said, no, we have to go out. We have to go and we have to catch them over there. And the majority was to go outside. And he followed the majority against his own opinion. And they lost. And the Quran is coming after he lost, or they lost, telling him, you did the right thing. By saying, وَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ, meaning, you have been nice with them, you followed their opinion, you lost, but still you have to stick to the principles of listening to the people. There is no human authority that it's not based on discussion, disputation, conflict, decision process, and majority process. So this idea that there is no difference between the two authorities, it never happened in his life. And he said himself, you know better about the worldly affairs than me. So the way he was dealing with his own authority, when it comes from God, you and me, no word. But when it comes from me, you and me, we discuss. And this is what we find in the Quran. Amruhum shura bainahum. They discuss together about their situation. So all this discussion that there is no difference between authorities in Islam, it's wrong. In his life, if you follow his life, you understand he himself was making a difference when it came to the decision process. The other thing which is very important also in his life is something that was completely new for the people in the relationship to women. In the way he was dealing with women, in the way he was opening up within the society. This was, in Mecca, a patriarchal society. But from the beginning, what he got from the Quran and the way he was dealing in his own life, there are signs even before he was getting the relation with Khadija. Khadija was older than him, and she was, in fact, he was an employee with her. He was working with her and for her at the beginning. And everything that we had in his life is the way he was dealing when it was his wife was asking about him and saying, well, how has he, and you know something that we are always repeating, kana khuluqul Quran. So he was the embodiment of the Islamic values and the Islamic principles, that's fine. But she said something else. Kana fi khidmati ahli. At home he was serving his people, his wife and his children. So the way he was dealing with his wife during Ramadan, showing affection and listening, we have thousands of prophetic tradition coming from his wife, meaning that he was communicating, he was listening. Many situations where he came back to his wife in situation, and sometimes he took from his wife the right strategy when, for example, after Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, all the companions didn't want to follow him. So Salama told him what to do and he followed. He was listening, he was communicating, and he went as far as to accept sometimes things that were coming as to teaching, as to leadership with women that were in his life so important. So the way he was listening, the way he was teaching, they went to him and asking him, we want you to teach us, knowing that in the patriarchal society, everything is for men. And he decided that he was going to teach them. The woman who came to him to say, my father married me without asking me. I said, do you want to divorce? Do you want to separate? Look, even the question is already that he's entering into the discussion. What do you want exactly? I said, no, that's fine. I'm happy with it. But I wanted all the people to know that this is not the father's business. This is what is in the hadith, that he entered into the discussion to help her to say, I'm happy, but it's not my father to decide for me. So when you come to this, and you understand the evolution from people killing their daughter to somebody coming with the message and giving this space to women within the mosque. His daughter entering into the mosque during the morning to pray. So there are many things that are very important in this story. Because first, she had access to the mosque. When? During Fajr. So during the night, early morning. They were coming to the mosque, praying. Not only this, She came to the mosque, he started to pray, and in between she started saying, talking to the people, saying, I gave protection to this guy. And what did the Prophet do? He said to all the people, have you listened to what she said? So first, the mosques were open. Second, they were praying within the same mosque, just before the men, because the gestures were, just to protect this modesty, but they were in the same space. Second, she talked. Third, he told the whole people, have you listened to what she said? We are in the 15th century. We are in 2015. There are mosques, there is no space for women. They cannot talk, and there is no respect for anything that is related to the space of women today. And you come to his life and you see how he was dealing with it. And telling the man, listen to what she said. So there is something here which is a discrepancy in the way we translate all this, in our understanding. And quickly, do I still have, yes, I have to finish, huh? Okay, give me 5 minutes. Very quickly, there are other situations. So this is, for example, what I was talking about, poor people, power, his own authority, women. Something also which was very important that we have to deal with is the relationship with people of other faiths. If you go deep in this understanding, he was oppressed by the people, and these people who were oppressing him were people from his own blood, his own tribes, his own society. And he decided to send the people to a Christian ruler by saying, he is a just man. Listen to what is so important. You don't judge the people by their religion, you judge the people by their consistency with the values that they are preaching. He said this twice, when later he said about a very specific situation. When he was 12, he went, and this is, we are told in the tradition, this is where he met Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, his friend for life, that he was at 12 in the house of Tariq, and they were having this pact that is known the Half al-Fudul, which in fact was an agreement among all the leaders contesting what was done by the tribes before. If you were not protected in the tribes in Mecca, you just can be lost because no one is protecting your rights. So this happened to a trader who came from Yemen, and he had no support, and people were in fact treating him unjustly. So the Dan gathered all the leaders and said, we can't do this. We should go by justice. Anyone who is treated unjustly should find our protection beyond the fact that we belong or not to a tribe. The Prophet, peace be upon him, later when he was the Prophet and he got the revelation, said, I attended this meeting, and if I had to come back to the principle of this meeting, I will do. Meaning, justice is beyond only being a Muslim. Justice is justice wherever it comes from. So if it comes from people who are denying God, justice is justice, I will come back to it. So say, he sent to a Christian ruler, and he said, the justice of people who were polytheists is still the justice I cherish, because it's justice. If you come to our understanding today, very often, everything which comes from Muslim is translating our principles as if our own principles are not coming from other traditions. And this is a problem. This is not what he said here. He did exactly the opposite. Meaning the principles could come from whoever is right. And this is now why you should understand الحكمة ضالة المسلم فهو أولى بها أينما وجدها. Wisdom is the lost property of the believer. He is the first to take it from wherever he or she finds it. Take it from whoever, as long as his wisdom, his justice, his value. You don't have the monopoly on principles. You have to share. You have to listen. You have to take. You have to be reminded by people. And this is something which is important. And when he was talking about other religions and when he was talking about justice. And it means for us, when we look at all this, that what we can get from his life are also things that are important, because in fact his life is helping us to deal with time. He came and transformed a society over 23 years. And there is two essential things that we find. The first is that he positioned himself as the last messenger, as the Quran is saying, but he was taking from the previous traditions. So it's acknowledging the fact that, yes, I think, yes, I believe I am the last one, but I am taking from all the others and respecting all the others. So there is a sense of respecting God's will of diversity because it helps us to be better ourselves. That's the first one. The second is, within his life, there are two things that are always there. There is no way for us to be spiritual, no way for us to understand our religion if there is no education. Education is central in everything that he was doing. Education is the key factor of reform and transformation. But with education, there is something which is an important factor. Education should go along with patience, a sabr, which means that you have to take into account history, transformation. And why this is important? Because education without patience could transform you into judges. Education with patience helps you to go along people and to help them to transform. And this is the way he was. He was less a judge than an educator, murabbi. And it means you have to deal with time. When you have so many situations where he was showing patience. Patience means I'm not going to judge you too quickly. We need time. Transforming, changing the society needs time. So this is something which is essential. The third is repeating. There are rules and they have to be respected. And the best way to respect rules is to understand them. Rules and meaning, always. Always. And this is where it's important to come back to this, because very often the religious traditions today are too much focusing on rules and not enough on meaning. What I mean by spirituality and religion. And as I said, it's important here to get a central value that he had as the last messenger is, with education, patience, and dealing with history, is the notion of courage, which is also very important. That all the messengers were, in fact, chosen also out of wisdom, and in this wisdom, the courage which is important. And I just did this with some of the topics. Now, if we follow in the footsteps of the Prophet and we want to get this, I didn't want to do this this evening, but all this, at one point, should be put into the chronology and helping us to connect his life with the facts, with the revelations that came at a very specific period of time. We need to read Revelation through chronology and his life with its evolution beyond the topics. But all these topics are helping us to get the substance, and then you can understand the evolution of things. And I would say that there is one thing that could be the final word here. It is said in the Quran many times that he was but a man, and this is our difference with the Christian or the Catholic tradition, and the great majority of the Christian traditions is that he's only a man. He was not the Son of God. But what is important in the fact that we understand that he's a man, what we need to do is to go deep in our study of the humanity of this human being. The humanity of the messenger, what is essential in the way he was dealing with his own humanity. So all this, it's important in the way you deal with education, in the way you deal with the values and the spiritual life. And this is where you can see that in fact, spirituality is to help you to be a human being that is mastering your humanity, to become close to the divine by doing something which is essential here. Never deny who you are. Never deny one dimension of who you are. The question is not to deny, the question is to master. It's not to refuse who you are, it's to improve the way you are by mastering. And this is the spiritual education that we find in everything. And this is the way he was dealing with himself and the way he was dealing with his companions. So that's it. These are some of the elements and the views that I wanted to highlight this evening.